What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the fighting game tutorial series, we are going to be going over dazing opponents, or stunning them, making them confused to the point where they can't act on anything. So if I come into my game here and load up a level, we can skip through these cinematics, and I can attack my opponent and put them into a dazed state. Their head's spinning, they can't move or jump or do anything. And at that point we could combo them into other states, do other actions with them. So I can daze them and then attack them to knock them out of it, or the daze will go away on its own once the animation is finished. This mechanic is slightly different from the stun, and I did get a few requests for it, but the most important elements of this are what we can use it for, and we can use it to mimic Scorpion's Get Over Here move that is so iconic that a lot of you have asked for. That's exactly what we'll be doing. So when the opponent gets brought over by the spear, they will go into the dazed state, which will then allow Scorpion to combo them, or whatever our character is. It will allow us to combo them. And I want to put this out just as a fun little episode. We've done a lot of complicated stuff recently, so this is a fun one. It's pretty simple, and it will lead to some really cool moves and attacks in the future. Alright guys, before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for everything that you do, and just a quick update on that, by the way, if any of you are interested in supporting me through Patreon or YouTube membership, or just sending thanks with super thanks, there are new rewards for all of those things, so you'll get new benefits, including getting these projects for free when the templates are released on the Epic Marketplace. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, go ahead and click the link in the description for the Patreon or YouTube membership. I'll put the link for the Patreon right here in the top right corner. You can click that and check it out if you want to see what benefits await. This is episode 191 of the fighting game tutorial series, so if you want to get caught up and check out all the cool things we've done, from all the different attacks we've done to the actual logic in the game mode, any of that good stuff, I'll show you the entire playlist right here in the top right corner. You can click that and check out every other episode in the series. If you're more interested in just the daze mechanic, I will link you to these episodes right here. It's not required that you watch them, but these are our stun episodes, which might be more what you're going for. It's things like hit stun and hit reactions, which you might be interested in. But with all that out of the way, guys, we can go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and hop into it. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, and we are going to be working in both today. Let's start in the code, and specifically let's go to our base character.h. For me is the fighter template character.h. Now, in my fighter template character, I have two major enums, the character state and the combo state. The character state refers to what the character is currently doing, or what the player is trying to make the character do. And the combo state refers to what has happened based on attacks that they received or status effects that they have. So have they been stunned? Are they being bounced right now? Are they knocked down? I've added a new one today. Technically, I've added two. The bottom one is a spoiler for the Scorpion episode, so don't worry about that right now. You don't have to add it. But the one we need to add today is the dazed state. So we need this E_dazed, and that's what I'm calling it because we already have stuns like stunned low, stunned mid, stunned high. And so I didn't want to call this like mega stun or hard stun or something like that. So I called it dazed, and that just means they're confused. They still won't be able to do anything like regular stun, but it's going to be less based off the attack itself and just if the attack can stun them. So go ahead and add this value to your combo state. And then once you've done this, let's go to our take damage function. For those of you that have been watching the series, you'll know that the take damage function has a ton of different parameters in here, and a lot of them come from the hitboxes themselves. Basically, we're going to add a new parameter to this called should cause daze. So we have a few parameters in here that are optional parameters, meaning that if we don't pass anything into them, they just will result in a certain value. It's going to be one of those. So if we don't call the take damage function and pass in a value for this, it will still work. It'll just default to false and the daze won't occur. Really, most attacks and most actions aren't going to cause daze, so this is good to default to false. But if we do pass it a true value, then we know that it will be useful in the future, and we can actually cause daze with this function call. So you see we have damage amount, hit stun frames, block stun frames, pushback amount, launch amount, hitbox height, hitbox location, hit sound, should cause hard knockdown, should cause daze is the one I've added, should ignore hit stun decay, and should ignore damage decay. So this last one here that I've added, this should cause daze. I put it here just because should cause hard knockdown was right next to it. And so I thought it was a good spot to do it, but it doesn't really matter where you put it as long as you put it in the list of optional parameters. In C++, when you're putting optional parameters in a function, they have to be at the end of the parameter list, so it has to be, in my case, after hit location here. If it's not after hit location, it won't let you compile, so just make sure you put it somewhere at the end of the list here in your parameter list. And at this point, your take damage function has been updated to support that boolean. So now we can go into the fighter template character.cpp and go down to our take damage function. I have a lot of code in here. You can go ahead and search for it if you want, or you can just scroll down like this and you will find it. Typically better to search, but I try to make it not super confusing. So it is in this file. I'm just scrolling down and it'll be after the attacks here. And here we go. Take damage. Now in here we need to make sure we update that parameter list as well. So we have all of our variables here, and after should cause hard knockdown I've added should cause daze. Notice that with all optional parameters you don't need to include the equals false here, because the parameters are already assumed that they are going to be that value from the header file unless we pass in something different. So you just have to add it to that list, and once you've done that you're good to go. Now the take damage function will know if that attack or that reason for the damage should daze the opponent or should daze the person that is being hit by this damage. And if they are, what we want to do is we want to avoid stun in this case. I don't want to stun the opponent if they're getting dazed. They're different. So by stun I'm referring to hit stun or block stun, but by daze I'm referring to that confused state. We have a lot of logic in here, but the really important logic is this. If the character is not able to successfully block this attack under any condition, that's this if statement right here. Well, I don't want to ever cause daze if the opponent blocked the attack. So if they block the attack, we're not going to do it. So we're only worried about this if statement, not the else. I don't care if the attack lands during a counter hit or just a regular hit, so we don't want to put it inside of a specific counter hit or non-counter hit set of logic. And at a certain point, I will get to a spot where I have this logic right here. And we're checking to see if the number of hit stun frames is greater than 0. This is important because if it is greater than 0, this means that the character has been stunned. And if they are, we have to determine if they were stunned high, stunned mid, or stunned low. Those are 3 different animations that we play. That's the main reason that we have those different enums. But regardless, they're going to be in the stunned combo state. I don't want them going in there if this damage should cause the character to be dazed. So I've taken everything in here from this entire if statement, and I've put it inside of another set of if-else logic. So now I've added an if statement to check if we should cause daze. If this boolean returns true, we want to set our combo state for this character taking damage equal to e combo state : e daze, the one we made at the start of this episode. And if that is true, then we don't want to do the stun logic. So we won't go into this else, meaning we won't call begin stun, and we won't set the combo state to one of these stunned states. However, if we should not cause daze, if this boolean returns false, it will skip this if statement, go into the else statement, and then do the regular stun logic. That's the only place we need to put it. So we are safe, we are good to go, and take damage. We will cause daze if this take damage function call has true passed in for that parameter. Now, to actually get that data to take damage, we have to determine what damage types are going to cause daze. And in my case, it's just going to be a regular hitbox right now. In that episode with the spear mechanic, the get over here move, we're going to make it a little bit more complex, but we just want to make sure that the mechanic works right now. And in that next episode, I'll show you how you can kind of customize it to get more of the effect that you want for that move and for other moves that may do that sort of thing. So we need to go into the hitbox actor.h because this is how all of our hitboxes are set up. And we have these different parameters on them. And you'll see a lot of them are the same ones that were in take damage because a lot of times we pass the data along from the hitbox directly into the take damage function. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Now, we want to add this boolean, this should cause daze, in here as well. I put it pretty much in the same spot that we did for take damage, so you see I have should cause hard knockdown. I put it below that, which is after that, and I put it before the should ignore hit, stun, and damage decay booleans. But again, this doesn't matter. This is just for convenience. I'd recommend that you do this so you can easily pass them along, but you can put it wherever you want. The important part is that you add this boolean, and basically it's should this hitbox be able to daze the opponent. It is a U property, edit anywhere, blueprint read write. That way we can access it and view it in the blueprint. That category isn't required, but it just helps organizational things, so I put it as a category of hitbox, which all of my categories are the same in the hitbox right now, so it doesn't really matter. And I've called it should cause daze, and that's a boolean. Now, these values are in a structure so that I can make a data table out of them, so I don't need to do anything in the CPP to set a default value for them. So at this point we're good in the code and we can go into the editor, and we want to go first things first to our mutant hitbox data, or your hitbox data table. Now when you come into your hitbox data table, here are all my hitboxes that I have in the game right now. I have proximity, strike, throws, and projectiles in here. You should be able to go to any of these hitboxes in the table, scroll down, and you should see the should cause daze boolean here. I've only put it on one attack right now, so go to an attack that you want to use. That is my light attack hitbox 2, which is the mutant's rifle punch that he has. And I've set should cause daze to be true. So go and pick at least one attack that you're using the hitbox data from and assign it here to be checked. And you'll be good to go with that. That hitbox will now be set up to cause daze if it lands against the opponent. So we need to go into our animation blueprint. Now that we are in here, we want to go to the attack. You can either just go to the one attack that we're going to be using today, or override all your logic to do this, because this is really how it should be set up. All your attacks should pass in all the data they need to each hitbox. And so I have my anim notifies here, which actually spawn the hitbox. And I grab the appropriate data table row, and that is my light attack hitbox 2. That's the one that causes daze, so that's the main one I need to focus on for today. And then I break that row to get all the variables, and you should see the should cause daze hitbox data here. Now, if you don't see it for any reason, just click on the break hitbox data node that you have and go ahead and check it in this list. I'll say as pin, and that just means that you're going to make it visible as a pin on this node. Now, we need to pass it into our functions that we have. So earlier in the series, we set up the create proximity hitbox, create active hitbox, create projectile hitbox, and create throw hitbox. The proximity hitboxes don't deal damage, so they don't need to cause daze. If you want to set them up for any reason, you could. But I'm going to focus on the other three, create active, projectile, and throw hitboxes. So for the first one, I've already done it. The other two I'm going to do with you live. So create active hitbox, I just click on the node, or you can click on the function in the list, and you will get your details about the function. You have your input parameters. What I want to do is add a new one by pressing the plus. New parameter. It's going to bring you to a parameter at the bottom of the list, and then I put it in the same spot that I did in the hitbox actor class, as well as the take damage function. You can change the order by pressing these up and down arrows. And we want to make a parameter in the create active hitbox function called should cause daze, and that's going to be of the boolean type. Once we do this, we'll have a new pin here for create active hitbox, and you just want to pass along should cause daze into should cause daze. Just pass the data along from the hitbox data into the create active hitbox. Go into create active hitbox, and in this node you'll have a new pin called should cause daze. And we're going to do the same thing that we do for all of the other parameters, or most of the other parameters, in our set members and hitbox data. So essentially we spawn a hitbox actor, and we set all the data in this node. Now, if you click on this node, set members and hitbox data, we also have all these pins just like we did in the event graph. So make sure you enable should cause daze right here, and the pin will show up in this list. And at that point, you want to take the pin from the function should cause daze and pass it directly into should cause daze right here. Now, I have all these reroute nodes because I think it looks a little bit nicer with all this ridiculous stuff that I got going on in here. But really, it just comes down here. You can see it's that highlighted line. It's this one right here. I'm going to go across here, and it's passed into should cause daze up here. Now, at that point, you are good to go with a create active hitbox. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to set up the create projectile hitbox and create throw hitbox to also support this method. Now, I would go to one of my create projectile hitboxes, doesn't matter which one, and I have my homing thunderball. And this one I've already set up the hitbox data for a lot of the parameters. We have the break hitbox data, and should cause daze is already here. Remember, you can enable it if needed, but we don't have a parameter in this function. So I'm going to my create projectile hitbox function. I'm making a new parameter. I'm going to move it up 2 slots, and I'm going to say should cause daze. Going to pass that into create projectile hitbox, and then I'm going to go into the function, and you'll see I have a new pin here. So I'm going to move these other nodes down just to organize it, and you can see I want to put in should cause daze. So I go ahead and I enable that as a pin, and I'm going to connect them. Should cause daze to should cause daze. And I'm going to add some reroute nodes to make it look a little bit cleaner. And what I'm going to do, this isn't necessarily required for you, but I'm going to hide any pins I don't have things plugged into right now, just to clean that up. And there we go. So now the create projectile hitbox also works the same way as the create active hitbox. And the last one we need is the create throw hitbox. So I'm going to find my reference to where this function is called, and it's called right here. So I have my grab active and notify, and these are what I'm passing into the function at the current time. You can probably guess what we're going to do by now, but we have our break hitbox data. I have my should cause daze, which is a pin. My create throw hitbox does not have anywhere for that to go. So I want to make a new parameter, move it up to above the ignore hit, stun, and damage decay, call this should cause daze. Pass in should cause daze. And then I can go into create throw hitbox. I can look at my node. You'll see I have a new pin for this parameter. I'm going to move my other reroute nodes down. I'm going to go to set members and hitbox data and check should cause daze, so it is displayed here. I'm going to make a reroute node, and then another reroute node, and then I'm going to plug that into should cause daze. All right, let's try this again. Should cause daze into reroute node, and then that reroute node into another reroute node, and then that into should cause daze. There we go. And now we're good to go. The throw hitbox can cause daze. There's one other thing I want to note here. So while the throw hitbox can cause it, that is with collision of the throw hitbox. I have another hitbox, as I call it, in this table that is the backward throw damage. And that is where I deal the damage when the throw has been completed. So this backward throw hitbox is actually grabbing the opponent. This is the grab. This damage is when they actually take damage in the throw. If you want to do the daze when the damage is caused, which I would recommend over the grab, then what you'll need to do is go to where you use this backward throw damage, and you can search for it. I think there is an underscore here. And you can see I have my apply throw damage, and I do a similar thing where I get the appropriate data from that backward throw damage row, and I have the appropriate variables that I want here. So I want to pass in should cause hard knockdown, which apparently I wasn't doing, but I should have done that in the episode where I implemented that, and should cause daze. So if the throw or the daze should occur in the backward throw damage here, make sure that you enable both of these. And they will go into the take damage function with the results from this data table. Now that is all of our possible cases for causing daze, depending on the hitbox. So at this point, we're good to go in the animation blueprint. And what we need to do is go to the hitbox actor blueprint. Now, once we're in here, we have one thing we need to account for in the hitbox actor BP, and that is if this is a standard hitbox or projectile hitbox. Now, if it is a regular hitbox and not a projectile hitbox, what we want to do is go into our check collision event. And you can see at one point we call it take damage. And in here we're passing along all the parameters from the hitbox data that we have. Well, this is no different than the animation blueprint in this regard. This node will automatically have this hitbox data should cause daze, and now the take damage function also takes in this parameter, so we just want to pass this along. And it's that simple. What I recommend doing for this file is going to all the places that take damage is called in the hitbox actor BP. I have 5 of them, so let's start. The first one is from outdated logic that I've kept for the purposes of the tutorial series, and so is the second one, so we can ignore both of those. The third one is in the projectile logic, I can tell, but you can also look at the event and say it is check projectile collision. You can see we call take damage in 2 different ways here, and just so you're aware, these 2 different take damage function calls are coming from if we are using complex hitboxes or not, which basically means if we're using 3D hitboxes over 2D hitboxes. So you may only have 1 take damage call here. If you have 2, great, do what I'm doing here. If you have 1, also great, you only need to do it for the 1 case. I'm just going to organize this a little bit. That way they're not overlapping with each other. And you see that the take damage for the projectile has the should cause daze here in the break. Remember, if it doesn't, you can mark it as a pin. And so you can pass it along to the take damage function now. I need to do it for both of these take damage function calls. So there we go. Both of these are accounted for. You'll notice the 4th take damage is this one right here, which we already did. And the 5th one is the one for the check collision event, which we also already did. At this point, we've passed the data along from the hitbox data table to the animation blueprint, to the hitbox actor BP, the one we actually spawn, to the character when a collision is met and we deal damage to them. The last thing we need to do is actually have the character react when they are hit by a hitbox or have their state set to the dazed state. And we can do that in the animation blueprint for the character. So this is really ugly because there's a ton of stuff going on here. But for this episode, all we really need is our idle state, or the state that we can go to dazed from, and this new state that we're going to add. And then I'll go over all the transition rules. So I'm going to say you can go from idle to dazed. There's probably a lot of states you want to be able to send the character to dazed from, but for now we're just going to work with idle to dazed. So right click, add a new state, and you can call it whatever you want. I called it dazed, but you can call it stun, doesn't matter. Now, in my dazed state, I have an animation called Mutant Dazed, and it looks like this. So we want to play this animation in the output animation pose, but we also want to disable looping because in this case I just want it to play once and then finish. Now, Dazed itself doesn't have any events on it or anything like that, so nothing you need to worry about. We need to be able to transition from idle to dazed and dazed back to idle. So let's look at idle to dazed. So make that connection. You'll get this little node here. You can click on it to see the details, and you don't have to set anything in here, no events or anything. And then if you double click on it, you can set the rule. The rule we're going to use is if the character's combo state is dazed, we'll go into this. Remember, in take damage, we set their combo state to be dazed if the hitbox or the reason for the damage should trigger that daze effect. So all we have to do is grab our character reference, drag off of this and get the combo state, then drag off of the combo state and type equal equal and choose the enum, and then pick the combo state you want, which in this case is dazed. Then put that into the result, can enter transition. That's what we've done here. So entering the state is pretty simple. Once we're dazed, we'll go into this animation. Now to return from the animation, it's not so simple. We can't just do automatic rule based, so once the animation finishes, it stops, because we need a way to exit out of the dazed logic. The combo state is still going to be dazed when the animation ends unless we tell it otherwise. So let's do two things here. So first things first. Now what I decided to do for the transition from dazed to idle is just make sure that this animation is complete. You could technically do it with the automatic rule based and it would work fine, but I feel a little bit safer using this method because no matter what happens, if we are in the dazed state and it plays the whole way, we will be able to return regardless of any issues like changing the speed of the daze animation or the play rate. This will work regardless. So when you're in a transition rule, you can search get relevant anim time remaining, and in parentheses it will have the name of the state, which is the dazed state. So get relevant anim time remaining dazed. And so we can actually drag off of this, type less than or equal to get float less than or equal to float, and leave it at 0, meaning that the animation is finished and there's nothing else left to play. At this point, we can drag this into the result so that once the daze animation finishes, it knows it can go back to idle. But if we don't reset the combo state after this point, it will still be in dazed, which means we can go directly from idle back to dazed. So on this transition rule, if we scroll down to the notifications, we can add a start transition event, which basically means once we're done and we start transitioning to idle, we'll call an event that we can then fill out logic for. You can type any name you want in here. This will be the name of the event, so I called it end daze. Now, once you make that, you can go into your event graph and you can go to where you want to add this event. Right click and type end daze, type the name that you put in that notification, and you want the one that is the event anim notify end daze. I've already got it here, but you'll be adding it for the first time. And what we want to do is reset the combo state. So we're going to grab our character reference, get it, and set the combo state. And we're just going to set it to no combo state. This just means that the character will no longer be dazed, and so they can resume their normal behavior. Going back into the state machine, I do have 2 other transitions that I can go from dazed. You may have a lot more, or you may not need these depending on your use case. But I allow Daze to go to hit reaction and launched because I want to be able to combo out of it into other moves. So the one character dazes the other, and then they can go and continue to attack them. Now, I already have rules for my hit reaction and launch, so I use them, but I'll go over them quickly. So I go from dazed to hit reaction, and I have a shared transition rule. If you've been following the series, you'll have this, so you can use your enter hit reaction for this state. If not, we just want to check and make sure that our combo state is one of the following: stun low, stun mid, or stunned high. If it is, we can enter the hit reaction. Then I have daze to launch. Again, if you're following the series, I have a launch from ground shared transition rule, which you can go ahead and use here. But if not, the combo state on the character should be equal to launched, and if it is, we can go from dazed to launched. And that's everything you need to know to get Daze working in your game. So now you will be able to go into your game, use any of the attacks that you set should cause Daze on. And when that hitbox comes out and hits that opponent, it will daze them. And then you should be able to do other things like follow it up and lead them into a hit reaction like that, or lead them into the launch like that. Anyway, guys, I hope this video helped you make Daze in your game, and I hope you are all excited for the get over here mechanic in your own game. If you are, please subscribe. It's completely free and does more for me than anything else you can do. I just really appreciate it. Want to give another thank you to my Patreon members and YouTube membership subscribers. You guys are awesome and keep this series alive, so I'm really grateful for you. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I would be happy to help you, and it's completely free. And with all that out of the way, guys, that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.